Thank you, Mr Speaker.
I call Chris Whaafoy.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, for
5
an
minutes.
opportunity to speak briefly to the Border Processing Arrivals and Departures Levy Bill. Mr Speaker, I believe the questions just posed by James Shaw, the Green Member of Parliament, are good ones, and the time of this Parliament wouldn't be being taken up asking these questions if this piece of legislation had followed the normal process. If we had a select committee, this piece of legislation would have either gone to the Primary Industries Select Committee or perhaps the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Select Committee, and these really basic questions, Mr Speaker, could have been answered. But no, we are here at 11 minutes to 8 on a Saturday night, and I know some of the members across the other side of the House don't want to be here, but it's their own fault. It's their own fault, because this didn't need to be rushed through this Parliament under urgency, and some of the very basic questions that Mr Shaw is asking could have been answered. And Mr Chair, the process has been completely backwards, and that's plain to see, Mr Chair, in the Departmental Disclosure Report, where a simple question was asked, were any regulatory impact statements provided to inform the policy decisions that led this bill? Now, usually, Mr Speaker, that's something that's basic. It's on the table for us so we can get some of these simple answers that Mr Shaw has asked, that Mr Prosser has asked, members from the Labour Party have asked. But the answer to that question is no. And it's quite surprising that we've got to the stage where we're onto the second reading of this bill, and the departmental report says a RIS was not prepared in support of the decision to implement the policy. However, the regulatory impact of imposing a levy, that's their spin, and alternative options was set out in a Cabinet paper proposing its introduction. A consultation RIS will be prepared and submitted for consideration by Cabinet when approval is sought in late May. In about a week or so, well after this piece of legislation is going to be passed. So, Mr Chair, this is just not good enough. If this government wants to introduce a new tax, a travel tax on New Zealanders, put it through the ringer, through the scrutiny of a select committee. But no, it didn't warn anyone. It said there would be no new taxes. So to try and get away and sweep this under the carpet, it puts this piece of legislation under urgency at, hopefully at 10 to 8, while they think people are watching the Hurricanes beat the Blues, Mr Chair. And I'll come to a conclusion soon, but I'd just like to also make a plea to members on my side of the House. Take it easy on Stuart Smith. Take it easy on Stuart Smith. He's a new member to the House. It's his first agency. He's a bit tired. He's had a hard week, and he let his guard down, and he got caught out telling the truth. Got caught out telling the truth. Let's forgive him. Let's forgive him for that, because he only confirmed what we already know, that this is not a levy. In fact, it is a tax. It's not the first time, Mr Speaker, that the government has used this urgency to bring another tax. The Telecommunications Development Levy was also a tax. This is also a tax. Let's forgive Mr Stewart. Let's forgive Stuart Smith, sorry. Forgive him. But we can't forgive Nikki Wagner. She's the minister. She's the minister. And she let it out also that this is a tax. Mr Speaker, a tax is a tax is a tax. The Prime Minister says that this tax won't make a blind bit of difference, but I don't think that's necessarily the case, Mr Speaker, because what did the Tourism Export Council's Chief Executive, Leslie Imink, I think it is, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, say, a couple of days after the Prime Minister spoke to their conference, she said, well, this is a clear surprise. It's the first reaction that there was no discussion with either the inbound or outbound tourism agencies in New Zealand and the implications for the traveller. Mr Key went along and spoke to them, didn't bother telling him. What's the go there? Mr Chair, and also the Prime Minister posed a pretty simple question. Mr Speaker, that the Prime Minister, sorry, I've got the jitters from the committee stage, sorry, Mr Speaker. The Prime Minister posed a pretty simple question. Is it a levy or is it a tax? He said, go Google it. We Googled it. It's a tax. End of story.